All right. So, diving into the reproductive system. What is the reproductive system? You would not say the system that we use to reproduce. You don't use the term to define the term, right? So what is it doing? We are producing and nurturing sex cells, and we transport them to the site of fertilization. Okay? And again, two different, male and female. And I will start with this as well. Are you comfortable that the anatomy and the physiology we're going to talk about was designed to interact that way? I think it's one of the most brilliant things that Satan ever did, was get sexuality so tangled up in sin and negativity. Because it is maybe even one of the most powerful emotional pieces that happens to us as humans. And for it to be twisted to be so negative, man, it's brilliance. It's brilliance. But again, it helps for me to say, no, God designed that to fit there and produce those feelings. Right? That's natural. That's good. Okay? When that happens is a matter of us to have a conversation about. Okay, so because guys are significantly easier, let's just be honest, in the reproductive system. Nowhere else. I wasn't making any generalizations. We'll talk about the males first. You guys are a tough crowd today. So, what is the male reproductive system designed to do? What's its main purpose? Is to produce sperm. Okay? Because that sperm contains all of the genetic information for that male. Half, 23 chromosomes, right? But of course, every other cell in our body has 46. Why does the sperm need only 23? We're pausing. You're thinking about that? Why only 23 chromosomes in the sperm, sir? In the egg, there's only 23 as well. So when the two of them come together, you've got 46, which is how you are half your mom and half your dad. You know when you go visit your dad's parents, and they're like, oh, you're just like your dad, and oh, you look like your face, right? And then you go visit your mom's relatives, and they're like, oh, just like your mom and this, right? You see both of you in the other, right? Which I think is a cool thing, that you are literally a mashup of these two people. What's the primary sex organ for the guys? You want to say the penis? You're wrong. Really? Yeah. It's the testicle, the testes. Okay? Why? Because again, what's the main point of the male reproductive system? To produce sperm. Where is sperm produced? In the testes. Okay? So the other ones we call the secondary or accessory sex organs. Okay? And for the guys, you're really only dealing with the penis as being our secondary sex organ. We'll talk more about those as we go. Here's the lovely pictures. Again, I always love these sliced in this sagittal plane, because no one ever actually looks that way, but again, they're trying to prevent it from being pornography. I see. I'm with. Okay? So let's talk about some quickly. We're going to go through a whole lot more as far as anatomy pieces. But a quick overview. Okay? So, you have, again, testicles. We were just talking about that there. The testicles are surrounded by a skin sac, which is called the scrotum. Can anybody tell me why? I'll be impressed if you know. Again, because the ovaries, which are the same thing as the testes, the ovaries are not outside the body, right? So why is the testes outside the body? It is very much about temperature control. Sperm need a lower temperature to fully develop, to develop well. And so therefore, by having them outside the body, the testes outside the body, the temperature is slightly lower, a couple of degrees, but it's enough that it allows those sperm to be created. We'll talk more about this, to develop better. Some guys who have difficulty with infertility, one of the questions they get asked is, what kind of underwear do you wear? And I kid you this, I'm not kidding you. Depending on how tight underwear they're wearing, it can hold those testicles closer to the body, make them warmer, and therefore they can't produce sperm as well. Kind of weird, but true. Again, it doesn't mean if you wear tighty whities that you're not going to be able to have good sperm count. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? But again, for some folks, that is an issue. Moving on. The tube. The tube that starts out, there's this little coil on top called the epididymis. We're going to talk more about all these pieces. And then the tube that comes up and around, that's called the ductus deferens or the vas deferens. Has anybody ever heard of a vasectomy? Sure, that is the cutting, ectomy of the vas, that tube. The point of that would be it's a way of birth control. Okay? So if you put a snip here, actually most of the time now they just put a little clip. It's like a metal clip they put over that tube and close it. Then the sperm cannot get out, so therefore when a guy ejaculates, there is no sperm present there. It still has plenty of other fluid. We'll talk about all the pieces that ejaculate is made up of. But there's no actual sperm, so therefore you cannot cause someone to get pregnant. Makes sense. Right, much easier for guys to have this. Now, it doesn't always work to have that vasectomy reversed. We'll talk much more about this in the future. But yes, it is much easier. This is literally an outpatient procedure. You're awake while they do this. Okay? It's all right. Did I answer your question already? Please.
So you have a clip like in the...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where does it go?
So it gets reabsorbed. Oh. Right, because... and we'll talk more about this when we talk about the testes, but they're continually manufacturing sperm. It's on a continual basis. And you're not continually ejaculating. So there is this reabsorption of those sperm without any difficulties at all. There's no problem that you're not going to get cancer or something because of it. No, you're fine. Question? When guys can't? Well, guys don't have kids. We'll talk more about this in this unit. I'm joking, Josh. I'm joking. I'm sorry. You walked right into it. I couldn't help it. So you would call it infertile. So they are unable to produce that sperm. So there is a better name for it. Male infertility. I can't think of the name I'm coming up with. Yeah. Sorry. Shh. That was terrible. I apologize. Moving on. So that vas deferens wraps, you can see it wraps all the way up and around. What picture is this on? What page is this on, by the way? 520. It wraps all the way up and around the bladder. All the way up and around the bladder. And actually comes together here with this tube coming out of the bladder, which you know is the what? The urethra. So for the guys, both urine and semen travel to the outside on the urethra. 2 tubes, 1 function. Sorry, 1 tube, 2 functions. For the ladies, you have 2 separate tubes, right? One being the urethra, the other being the vagina. And what you'll see, I'll show you some pictures that male and female anatomy, they start as the same thing. And then as the baby develops, they separate into male and female. We'll talk much more about this. So again, that tube comes all the way down through the penis. It's called the urethra the whole way. You have this little gland called, this large gland called the prostate gland that we'll talk a bit more about. And other glands that are there, the seminal vesicle and the bulbourethral glands. These are all producing parts of the ejaculate, which we'll talk about this, the actual fluid that comes out during ejaculation. The penis is made up of 2 different kinds of tissue. You've got the corpus cavernosum and the corpus spongiosum. So again, these are Latin terms, and anatomists are not creative. They just describe what it is. So corpus means body, tissue, right? Spongiosum, what does that sound like? Spongy. It's a spongy tissue. That's really what it's called. Okay? Corpus cavernosum, what does that sound like? Cavernosum. Like a cavern, like a cave. So these are literally little openings, little cave-like areas that will be filled with, anyone? Blood. To produce an erection. That you literally have these 2 different kinds of tissues in the penis. The corpus cavernosum, which is the erectile tissue. The corpus spongiosum, which also the glands or the head of the penis is made out of. is a spongy or non-erectile tissue. Does that make sense? So the spongiosum is this bottom part where the urethra runs through, and the cavernosum is like a covering tube around all of that. What else did I miss? Oh, of course, you have the openings for the digestive system, or the exits, I should say, for the digestive system, where you have the large intestine into the rectum, out into the anus. I think that pretty much covers all the anatomy pieces. They do show you your pubic bone because, of course, that is right in this general area. It doesn't really play much of a role as far as the guys go, but you're seeing where that is. You do have this little end piece, little end covering of the head or the glands of the penis, which is called the prepuce, P-R-E-P-U-C-E, or the foreskin. Maybe you've heard it called that term before. So that would be when you have, why can't I come up with the name of it? To remove that, you are circumcised. Okay? And about 50-50 in the world. Maybe actually probably a few more non-circumcised than are. In Western countries, a little bit more on the circumcised versus the not. Are there benefits? Meh. They go back and forth. Some research has shown having a vasectomy, or not vasectomy, excuse me, having the circumcision, thank you, leads to some less prostate cancer in the guys. What it boils down to for most people, if your dad is circumcised, you are. 99% of the time. Unless they've made some conscious decision not to or to. But no significant benefits. Certainly no difference in function. It's just whether you have it or whether you don't. Questions anatomy-wise? That's a general piece. We're going to get into much more detail as we go on, but general piece. This is a diagram you should be comfortable labeling and knowing what the pieces are. Let's talk in detail about the testes here. So they are ovoid structures, so they're ovular shaped, and they're suspended again in that scrotum. There is actually muscular attachments to that scrotum that can draw the testes up into the body when cold. Because again, we're trying to protect that testes, right? So we want them to have a slightly lower temperature. But if you're in a let's say you jump into a very cold pool or whatnot, we don't want to damage that. So again, the body can draw, there's actually contractile tissue that can draw those guys into the body to protect them. Each testis is made up of 250 lobules, little divisions, that and all of them have these coiled seminiferous tubules that basically, as you're creating the sperm, it's dumped right into these seminiferous tubules that then transport it. They kind of store it in an area first, and then once ejaculation is coming, it's transferred outside the body. There is some interstitial cells that are around them that actually produce the male hormones. What's the big male hormone that we produce? Testosterone. Now, ladies do produce testosterone as well, but that's mostly your male hormone, or the most common, let's say. And then again, all of those seminiferous tubules carry the sperm to the epididymis, which is kind of like a storage area, and then eventually out into the vas deferens, out to the urethra, outside the body. Here's your zoomed in look at those testicles. So again, this is one testy. You have the epididymis up on top, the seminiferous, sorry, not seminiferous, the vas deferens, or the ductus deferens that's rolling around the outside here. They've cut one of those tubules, and they're showing you a cross-section. That's what the picture is on the right, on the bottom. And you see that the sperm start just literally as these epithelial-type tissues. And then they are slowly, we'll talk more about this process, they are slowly changed into this very distinct structure of a sperm. And once they get to the middle, that's when they're fully formed, and then they just simply follow that tubule up toward the epididymis, which again, that's kind of like the storage area for the sperm. And again, you've got a whole bunch of little lobules. This whole testy is full of these little lobules and tubes that all lead to one place. It's actually in the seminiferous tubule. This is a cross-section of that seminiferous tubule. So the whole tubule, every piece of it is producing sperm. Are you with me? Okay, let's keep rolling. So the sperm have a number of very interesting pieces, 4 main pieces to the sperm. Well, let's just show you. So you have the head, the mid-piece, the tail. And the head you can divide into 2 pieces, the acrosome and the nucleus. So nucleus is kind of duh, like we all know the nucleus, that contains the actual genetic information. What about the mid-piece? Anybody have any idea what that mid-piece does? Well, let's pause. How about the tail? What does the tail do? Actually does the propulsion, right? Okay, so it's actually moving back and forth. It's a flagellum, right? That as it moves, it propels the sperm. Okay, so we know what the nucleus does. We know what the tail does. What is about the mid-piece? What do you think that is? It's the motor. And honestly, if you zoom in, if you're looking at this just on, we're talking about the molecular level here, it looks very much like an outboard motor. Very similar. Has a lot of the same kind of characteristics to it. Michael Behe, who's a a molecular biologist, he uses this example as one of the ways that if you take out any sort of bias and you look at the design of this mid-piece, this flagellum motor, the only conclusion that makes sense is that somebody designed that. Because the thought that all of that could just come together randomly or piece by piece, it just doesn't make sense. There's too many pieces that you have to fit together just perfectly in order for it to work. I completely agree. Yeah, so it's a great example of one. He calls that irreducibly complex. It's a great argument. If you read, of course, there's 1,000 rebuttals to it. Anyway, worth checking out. There's another thing in that mid-piece. So if it's a motor, it's doing action, right, guys? What do you need in the body to do action? Energy. What do you need to give you energy? Oh, oxygen, sure. You just got represent. But what is oxygen used to make? ATPs. What makes ATPs? Oh, I was going to say, what's the powerhouse of the cell? Come on, guys. Yeah, they make ATP, right? So the mid-piece is full of mitochondria. Makes sense, right? Because it has to literally power this huge tail and drive that sperm up to the promised land, to the egg that it's trying to find. And you realize it's literally a race between literally millions of sperm with each ejaculation, and only one of them wins the prize. So you are a winner. The sperm that made you was the best, the fastest, the strongest. Makes you stand up a little taller, right? Like, yeah, I'm a winner, Hector. I'm a winner. All right. I think we've gotten the last piece. The last piece we didn't talk about. The acrosome. So, what do you think, what does that acrosome look like? Like a helmet, I would agree. Okay? So, it kind of serves 2 roles. Are you comfortable that the vagina is open to the outside all the time? You with me? Like there's no lid you put on it? You with me? So there are always bacteria trying to get in there. So the vagina itself, the environment of it is actually very acidic. It's a way to help keep things out of the body. We cool? So when you put sperm into it, right, it tends to want to kill said sperm. And actually, an awful lot of them are killed immediately. There's some ways that the male body goes about trying to protect them. We'll talk more about this. But that head piece kind of helps protect it a bit, A. But also, and maybe you don't know that this is how this works, when the egg gets to the sperm, or the other way around, the sperm gets to the egg, it literally has to bury itself into the egg before it's accepted. The egg has got this coating on the outside that is basically like the last test for the sperm to try and get into the egg. And so this acrosome contains enzymes that actually help digest that outside part of the egg to allow the sperm to enter into it. The acrosome. So 4 parts in what is the smallest cell in the whole human body, the sperm. It's pretty impressive. Are you with me? And again, on your study guide, I didn't print it, sorry, I'll print it for you tomorrow. That is something you need to be comfortable with. We'll finish here. In the male embryo, the spermatomatic... Thank you. The spermatogenesis means what? The beginning of the sperm, right? The creation of the sperm. That's what spermatogenesis means. So, you start creating these sperm that make these primary spermatocytes. And the spermatocytes undergo a meiosis division. Remember, most of our cells, how do they reproduce? By mitosis, right? Most of them go through that prophase, anaphase, metaphase, telophase, right? So that you get 2 exact copies, right? But the spermatocytes, the sperm precursors, they go through this meiosis process so that they become haploid, not diploid. Haploid means it has half the chromosomes, right? We're taking this cell that was 46 and we're making it into 2 cells with 23. I do need your attention, guys. And they continue to divide to form these spermatids, which then mature into this sperm cell. So here's your primary spermatocyte that has 46 chromosomes, undergoes the meiosis and breaks into 2 separate sperm cells. And those sperm cells then divide again to make 4 cells from this one piece. Does that make sense? And the whole point behind that, I'm not going to actually ask you to go step by step through it, but the point is your primary spermatocyte has 46 chromosomes, right? And it undergoes meiosis in order to break into these 2 haploid cells with only 23 chromosomes each. So again, when the sperm and the egg come together, you can make a whole baby, not just half of one. Good. I think that's a good place for us to stop here.